Okay. Okay. I don't know what your process is, so well, I guess there's no process.
There is no process, and that's what this is all about. My friends, welcome to episode 3 of the Undoing Perfectionism podcast, a podcast where we talk about our experiences with the creative process and hopefully share some learnings from these awesome conversations. I've got my friend here, Lewis Lotherington.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So can you tell everybody your first creative interest?
Creative interest. I guess creatively, like in primary school, my dad made me play keyboard. There was only like musical instrument on offer at the primary school, so played that, learned like your basic keyboard, how to read music. Then in high school, I was like, all right, I want to do something more. I was like, Dad, I want to play the drums. He's like, no, you're not getting a fucking drum kit. He was like,
I was denied drums as well.
We'll get you a bass. I was like, oh. I was like, nah, drums. So he's like, no, bass it is. I was like, okay. So actually, it was that period of my life where you start discovering music for yourself.
Cool.
And I don't know if it was one of the first albums I ever bought. It was one of two, but Red Hot Chili Peppers' Californication.
Yeah.
And then when I distinguished what a bass guitar was and what a guitar was, and I was like, holy fuck, these bass lines are sick.
Cool.
And then I just like started learning Chili Peppers songs once I got the basics, like past the basics. And I kind of just got hooked on bass, and then I was like slapping bass and everything, and didn't really eventuate to anything until I changed school in year 10, and then I was in a couple bands, and we had some cool, like we played like not many gigs, but we played a couple cool ones. We supported like British India at the Hi-Fi in Melbourne.
No kidding. That's huge.
Yeah, but obviously as high school, year 11 and 12 got a bit more serious, and especially year 12, I just needed to focus more attention to studies, so I had to pull the pin on something because I had sport as well I had to try and fit in. So the band was that. And then over the years, just always had guitars about. Started focusing more on guitar as opposed to bass. Went through a stage where I started buying amps, guitars, pedals, the works, and then it got to a point where it was just it was satisfying, but I wasn't getting much out of it. And I'd always had an interest in photography, so it stemmed from I went to America in 2014 with my dad, and we did heaps of cool stuff like helicopter over the Hoover Dam. Cool scenery, like Bryce Canyon, and just had my shitty iPhone and got what I thought were cool photos at the time, because cool scenery, cool photos, and then you bring them home, put them on your computer, and like, these are shit. So the following year I went to China, which was 2015. I was like, fuck it, alright, I'll buy a camera. I just like level entry camera, not really knowing what to do with it, but like obviously willing to learn. And bought a couple books. But I always found, like, whilst I could get the basics from the books, I'm more of a hands-on type person. I need to do something for myself to figure out how to do it. And I feel like most of my photography life has been that, with guidance from friends who are, I guess, have more experience than me. But, just winged it in China, man. And, like, went around, like, we did 5 or 6 different cities. Cool scenery, cool just cool things to shoot, just different culture, so always something different, and just got some really cool photos I was stoked on. Like we paid extra to go to the Great Wall, but a spot that's not frequented by tourists, so we had like rain of the Great Wall for 4 hours.
That's so sick.
And then like an epic storm came across as well, so we were kind of stuck in the middle of a storm. It's a bit scary, but you could see the sky shifting colour, and so much sky, so much wall, and I still like the photos to date, like even though
you took them quite early when you got into photography.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, didn't have a tripod, so I just set up on there's not many straight spots on the Great Wall, but on the wall, put my camera down.
Yes.
And I'd probably do things a bit differently now in terms of how I would have taken the photos, but I feel it's just all part of the learning process, and the fact that I still appreciate those photos now.
So good.
I think it's just the whole experience involved too.
Awesome. So you've taken me through the journey up to photography, and you kind of swept me away in that, because I'm at a point where I'm like, man, I really want to get a camera.
Yeah.
Because like I've been taking photos with my phone for a fair while, but so initially you got into keyboarding, but you said that you found your own interest when you understood the bass guitar with the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, yep.
So when you were learning keyboard, how was that process? Did you feel like you were a little bit more like forced with your parents to do that? And
I mean, I was never entirely forced, and I think it was just them trying to get me to have a creative outlet or like learn another skill sort of thing. And music's a great thing to learn. And I really did like enjoy what I did of it for the couple years. Like it was good learning to read music, and it obviously helped with my like swap over to bass guitar.
Just some of the fundamentals.
But it was just sort of very, very regimented, like sort of learning. Like,
did you have like a teacher? Or?
Yeah, I had a teacher, and just like obviously with, I guess music, learning music, it's going to be very regimented because there's certain ways you should learn things. But I didn't really appreciate that so much with the keyboard because I didn't vibe with it sort of thing. And then when I finally like begrudgingly picked up a bass guitar and ended up discovering what it was for myself that I liked about it, that's when it all kind of like all connected. And like I was like genuinely interested in it and just like loved playing it. Like I just pick it up and I would happily practice it because it was something I wanted to get better at. I wanted to learn new skills and I just found it fun. And I had a shitty Ashton bass and I've still got it.
No kidding, it's right there. Awesome.
It's just like it's still a nice bass to play, and I've played better basses, but it just feels like home. And I don't pick it up for 6 months at a time, and it just still feels nice to play.
Awesome. So when you started, so you had your kind of fundamentals with the keyboard, and then you moved on to the bass. So what did you find like that was easier, and what was more difficult to pick up with your next musical interest?
I guess I always had trouble with like more obscure types, signatures sort of thing, and trying to, I guess bass is kind of the basis of like keeping rhythm in a band. So I always found that part a bit tricky.
Did you just focus more on that because you found it more
difficult? Definitely. And then when I started learning to play with a drummer as well, that was another element I had to figure out, and like you got to keep the beat sort of thing. And especially, I guess the drummer I worked with at the time were at a similar level in our learning career. And we kind of grew those skills together, which was really nice.
Cool.
But yeah, that was always, I think some people like naturally have rhythm and some people don't. And obviously you can learn that. And I was in the latter where I didn't have rhythm.
Oh no.
And had to learn it. So,
but the drummer had rhythm, so you just kind of, did you learn it from him or?
Yeah, it was just, and just in terms of counting things out too, and just in terms of different time signatures, and it was just like more of a theory thing that fucked with me than the actual practice of it.
Yeah, cool.
Once I got the practice and then I worked out the theory, I was like, makes complete sense now. But it was just the whole putting it all together.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So how'd you find that process of like bouncing? You said you were at a similar level and you're kind of learning together.
Yeah.
Did you like actively like make a decision together that you would learn like how to approach like a time signature or something like that? Or was it more just free
fairly organic the way we did it? For that school when I was there from year 7 to 10, it was a private school and we had like half the population of the school were boarders, so like international students. So we could access facilities after hours because the boarders would have access to. And so we'd just go to the music room and just figure stuff out for ourselves. And even if that was like, we'd do theory together and then we'd just figure out a song we like to play as well. So we like rewarded ourselves with putting in the hard yards first.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
well, that's definitely some sort of process, you know, that I've definitely forgone for a long time.
Yeah.
And was talking to Katie B in the second episode of the podcast. Yeah. She was talking about celebration, and that's something I don't think I've done very well. Is like, reward myself with jamming out, I'd usually just go straight to the jamming out and forgo that kind of harder work.
Yeah.
So how did you find that would you just give yourself, say, an hour's jam and work hard in the 45, then jam the 15, or was it a time-based thing?
Yeah, usually it was just like, I don't know, like at a point of growing up and discovering new bands, new music, we had similar interests, so it worked out well for both of us, but it just sort of, we're like, oh, let's try and figure out this song. And even though I was only like bass and drums, and the song might be a huge guitar element in it, it was still fun trying to figure out those things together. So we'd probably started off with like half an hour of theory and then half an hour of just mucking around. But it kind of, once we got a bit more into it, and I guess started studying music as a subject for the later years when it gets a bit more serious, we probably put a bit more time into the theory side of it and just figuring out what the essentials as opposed to just mucking around.
So cool. Yeah, that's definitely something that my bands were pretty bad. We're pretty bad at. We'd just be jumping into jamming and not taking that time early on to get those theory things down. Yeah,
but you want to have fun too, especially like as an adult. Like you've learnt these skills growing up, and there's always room to learn. There's always room to grow. But sometimes you just want to, like, you work 8 hours a day. You just want to go and have a bit of fun and muck around on the bass or the guitar or whatever.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So moving from the band stuff onto taking up like the photography yourself. So you kind of learnt that putting in that work at the start benefited how like the play element was in the creativity.
Yeah.
So how was that when you first started getting into photography?
It was interesting. Like even just like after a month of having a camera, and just the way you picture the world is different. Like you picture it in thirds, or you look at different perspectives, and it's just like just things that now that I look at stuff, I just look at it like in a photographic mind, and it kind of like I'm learning like a lot of video stuff at the moment, and I look at lighting and everything, and I'm like, I was talking to Crystal last night, and I was like, oh, I can see where the light is in their eyes and where the shadow is, and it's just like weird things you pick up over time when you start learning new things. But from the get-go, I was very like hands-on because I wanted to figure stuff out for myself, but there obviously comes a point where I didn't know how to shoot in manual. Like I was just shooting in auto or aperture priority, where it takes into account like the lighting around you and everything. So I was like, it got to a point where like, okay, I need to start figuring this stuff out, and that's where I like started getting a couple books on photography. Wouldn't say anything too serious, because like you can get photography manuals which can be like a Bible, and it's just like I don't have the time or patience to get through this.
Just so overwhelmingly thick books.
I'd kind of like books, YouTube. There's so much like learning you can do through YouTube. It's
amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
And like the other day I was like, I don't know how to connect my flash to my flash to my trigger. And YouTube, like 30 seconds, like, oh, okay, done.
Yep.
So YouTube has definitely played a big part in learning and just finding photographers you like online who post content. They're like, well, this is how we go through this process. And it doesn't work for everyone, but it can give you an idea of how you should do it in a professional, I guess, environment. So
when you found the first like books that kind of got you set off, were you just like Googling stuff and like
Googling
top 10 best fundamental photography books?
And just like there was one I actually picked up at an airport, and it's called How to Take Great Photographs, and it was, I think I lent it to a friend, and I don't know who that was, never got it back, but I'll probably buy it again because it's very basic, and it shows you like just from like pinhole photography and like how people create basic photos.
Okay.
And then it just goes through the stages, explains aperture, explains like shutter speed and everything, and how you put all these things together. But with that, it gave you picture examples of how photos look along that process as well.
So you found that a pretty good resource.
Yeah, and like a very simple book, but I was just like, oh, maybe it doesn't need to be as complicated as those thick books make it out to be.
Right.
And at that point too, it was very much a fun thing for me to do. Like it would get me out of the house and would go for a drive to the rainforest and take photos. Or And I'd kind of, as time had gone on, lost that side of it because it got a bit more serious.
What side of it do you mean? The fun?
The fun side of it.
Okay.
Because I was shooting for work.
Yes.
So when you're shooting for other people and wanting to create content for them, you want it to be perfect.
Right.
But it also disconnects from why I started taking photos as well, because it was just like a fun thing to do and something I was interested in.
So so you said it felt quite different for you. So how would you describe, say, getting a photograph ready to hand over to a client as opposed to having a photo that you're happy with to just like share on socials for fun?
I guess the process isn't too much different, but I'd put more time into the photo that someone's paying for. Just because you want to give them the best product you can, and you're presenting yourself as a professional to the world.
Yes.
You want them to say good things about you, so it leads to further work, or further work with them.
Yes.
So I just want it to be the best product I could be, and that would, whether that be an hour more or 2 hours more, it'd just be more time in front of the computer. But with that, I've also learnt that when I shoot, I can make my time easier later.
If you do
it right. Yeah, so it's just like a trade-off. You have to figure out what works best for you. And just with skills I've learned over time and through friends, he's like, spend 5 minutes longer taking the photo. It'll save you half an hour like post-shoot. Right. So
just take like 5 or 10 more shots in slightly different settings and things like that.
So and normally like when someone's paying you by the hour, you want to be efficient. Right. You don't want to be spending time, like you feel like taking 5 minutes longer to take a photo could be like wasteful of their time and their money, but in the long run, that 5 minutes is saving them money
if you get the shot.
If you get the shot. So it's just I don't know, it's one of those things that's ever evolving and always learning that there's no right or wrong way. Obviously there's ways that are more correct, but you just got to figure out what works and then implement it into your workflow, I guess. Yeah.
So cool, man. So the reason that you're here today is because I saw a Facebook post you made.
I did.
So can you explain what happened leading up to that and what was in the Facebook post? And then we can kind of like just back and forth that
for sure. It's a few weeks ago now, so a lot's happened since then, and I feel like a lot of growth has happened since then too, awesome. Because it's just like input from other people. But I put out a Facebook post, and having read it back, I was like, oh shit, this seems like a plea for sympathy sort of thing, like putting myself out there, and it wasn't that. It was just
I didn't read it that way.
No, and I feel like most people didn't, but it was just like, this probably stems into the topic at hand.
Yes.
I look too much into things that I produce or create, and whilst initially, like cutting it short, well, I initially liked the product, you look at it further and you look at it further and you're like, oh, I could have done this better, or I could have done that better. And it's kind of like where I said before, when you start taking it to a professional environment, and it's all very serious, you kind of lose that fun element of why you're taking photos. And I was just curious with other creatives, like whether it's photographers, musicians, whatever, had those same feelings of things they produce, and how they deal with it, and like what their thought process is, how they, like whether it's an editing thing or whatever, like just how they deal with those negative thoughts, I guess, because ultimately at the end of the day, that's what they are, and it can cripple you. And fortunately, as I put in the post, it hasn't, because I've been able to keep working, but I feel like it definitely hinders the creative.
Hold you back from creating more, right?
Yeah.
So was there a particular piece of work that you'd been working on recently that made you think, that really made you reflect and make that post to ask or start the conversation?
I think it was at that point I was doing a lot of video work, that wasn't really my work. It was just more putting together video for someone else. But it got to a point where like I'm pretty poor with social media these days in terms of posting content and whatnot. But it got to a point where like, I've got nothing good to post. Whereas if someone else saw the photo, they're like, dude, why don't you post that? That's fucking sick.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, nah, it's shit. Like, I wouldn't post that.
Yeah.
And when I first took that photo and first edited, I would have been stoked on it. But just like...
putting your eyeballs on it too much.
Yeah, looking at it too much. And I just get to a point where I'm like, nah, it's not worth it. Like, I just put it to the side. And then, like, there was a video I did a while back, just making a coffee making video. And I was stoked on it initially. And then I just looked over and I was like, I could have put that there. Could have changed that.
Yes, but that was posted, that one? Or
it was at a later date when I looked back on it and had feedback from a friend. And she's like, dude, this is fucking sick. Like, you should do something with it. I was like, nah. She's like, nah, post it. And that's kind of like what I guess got me thinking about that whole Facebook post. Was the feedback from her. And she said, no, post it. It's good.
Yep.
And it got me thinking objectively about all my work that I probably potentially wouldn't have posted. Because I'm like, nah, it's not worth it. But I don't know. I think it's just, she's like, be kinder to yourself.
Yeah.
And since taking that advice on, I've looked at my work more objectively. I'm like, no, it is a good photo.
Yeah.
And whether it mightn't bring me anything, it might bring someone else something.
That's it.
And the whole photography creative process, whether it's music, photography, whatever,
yes,
it is subjective. Like,
totally,
people, we like heavy music, other people hate heavy music, and old me would have been like, oh no, you're stupid for not liking it. But like, as you grow, you're like, everyone likes something different, and that's what it is about that person that makes them. So whether I don't like what I create, someone else will. But
or maybe it could be that case of you might not like it. It might be up to that standard that you feel you're at, but somebody else still might appreciate it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's like the Mitch Hedberg joke. We used to play in a death metal band. Some people loved us, some people hated us, some people thought we were okay. Yeah,
that's it. So I guess it spurred from that conversation I had with a friend, and she's like, "No, post it," and I was like, "Okay, I will." And I don't know. I've been thinking about everything. I've been kinder to myself, I think. And I, shortly following that, when we were allowed to eat out again, went out with a group of mates, photographers, musicians, went out for dinner, and my mate brought an old film camera. And it was shit lighting, like it was dark. It was the Chinatown rooftop car park.
Okay, yeah.
So it was nighttime, poor lighting. And we just, I had my camera with me, and it was fun. We just had fun shooting, and I was like, this is why I fell in love with it. Because it brings, it can bring people together. You can do it by yourself, but it was that moment where I was like, the photos might turn out shit, but what does it matter?
Yeah, you're having fun.
I'm doing it, I'm having fun. And the photos turned out great. I was happy with them.
No kidding.
And even if they're grainy, it's fine. I'm trying to not be that perfectionist who doesn't want to share. I'm trying to be more open with sharing my stuff, whether it's good or bad. Because
you mentioned, sorry, just real quick, you mentioned that specifically, like something being too grainy. So is that something in general in like the fundamentals of photography that might say a photograph is bad that you're trying to avoid?
I guess with modern technology, it's a lot easier to avoid grain, because with cameras back 20 years ago didn't have the abilities they do now. So they got better sensors, they can deal with low light situations better, so that therefore reduces how much grain could be in a photo. But sometimes it's a grain that makes a photo as well, and that's what I'm trying to it depends on what you're trying to bring forward with the photo.
That's so cool.
But it's just like, it's hard in this day and age where you got TVs that are 8K and whatever, and everything's crystal clear, so you feel like you have to produce to that standard where everything has to be crystal clear. There can't be any like shitty pixels in the photo or grain. So I guess that's kind of where I was heading toward before all this crap happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, the photo's not good enough. But in hindsight, the photo was perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I guess you wouldn't have thought when you're in that headspace that the next photo you were going to take was going to be a grainy nighttime photo shot, and you were going to love it.
Yeah. So I think just that reconnection of having fun with it, and I've tried to, I've had a few paid gigs since then, tried to bring that fun element to the shoot, so it's like, while still professional and you bring across professionalism,
it's been difficult.
It's not as serious as it, not making the situation as serious as it needs to be.
Okay.
Especially with like when you're shooting people and headshots, like,
okay,
if you're tense as a photographer, it's got to come across to the subject. Right. So I just try and be fun and happy and do it because I love doing it.
Yeah.
And that will hopefully make the subject more at ease. And hopefully, like, at the end of the day, produce a better product all around that we're both happy with. Giving
it more of a relaxed and fun energy.
Yeah. And I haven't, like, a lot of work through the marketing company I was working for was restaurant based, so lots of like food and everything, and there is a serious element there because you're producing for a restaurant who's then going to put this on their website, put on their menus, put on their social media. So you want it to be
dealing with chefs must be a tricky one. You know, they're the most stressed out workers in the world, I think.
Yeah, like I just try and pick like the quiet times to go in.
Yeah.
So it's the middle of the day. They've got time to like put to you and like bring you. They don't have to rush to bring out their product.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they've all been pretty good, and Brisbane's pretty small, so you tend to like. I now know a lot of people in the food community, and especially the food blog probably helps with that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm just trying to, when I have a shoot like that again, try and not approach it so seriously and have a bit of fun with it, and then hopefully that fun will then reflect in the product afterwards.
Yeah, man, that's definitely something that I've not been doing, and like one of the main things that I think I've struggled with is just more. I spoke about it in one of my YouTube reflection videos. Is shiny object syndrome for me. It's like I start something and then this is really cool. I'll start that, and then this is cool and I'll start that. But now I've just been trying to get work out, like doing the 100-day project and things like that. Now I'm kind of doing what you're talking about. I really want to get work out. I want to get stuff happening because I know producing more product will help me learn and get me used to releasing things. But I am having fun with it, but I still could be having more fun with it. So I'm trying now. It's like about trying to find that happy medium between shiny object syndrome and, you know,
producing regularly.
Producing all the kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, and that being too critical of myself where I don't release anything at all. You know.
Yeah. And like with that whole not releasing anything with me, it was partly a time thing too, just because like full-time job, second job, I just didn't leave much, and like still wanting to live a life as well. You like, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes putting up a post on Instagram. That's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
But now like I think I've found a nice balance between it all, and social media has been good for me in the sense that it has given me a reach, like around Brisbane.
Yes.
In terms of hospitality, especially like. I've got work from that, so I've been quite grateful for it. And just like in terms of networking too, like I met a heap of cool people through social media and just connect on a bunch of different things, and through that learn new things too.
Yeah, so awesome.
Yeah.
So you said you've also had some things that maybe you haven't released because a similar thing to me, just not wanting to release it or not publish anything. Do you have any photos lying around you think that you could probably have released that you haven't?
For sure. I just have to dive into a hard drive somewhere. But there's probably like quite a few that I haven't posted that definitely could.
Cool. Now this might be the first time it's worked. So in the first two podcasts, I've ended with a request or a challenge to release something that you've not released and # call it done. Right?
Okay.
So you think you've got a few photos lying around. Would you like to participate and just pick something out? Doesn't matter what it is, and just even if you spend just half hour like finishing it off and call it done. A hashtag undoing perfectionism. Hashtag call it done.
Yep.
Awesome, dude.
Count me in.
So keen. Thanks so much.
That's all right.
We'll do that once the podcast is out after I finish editing. But is there anything that you've learned more recently? You said you've come to a good spot, even just in these last few months, from realizing what you're kind of going through, and then having that discussion through Facebook. Anything specific that you've learned that you'd like to share with everyone that you think is valuable?
I've learned a lot, like, I guess with the whole COVID period, it's been a good time for reflection for probably a lot of people. I guess that reflection got me to the point of the Facebook post, but I've been just trying to take things less seriously. Like work, photography, and just life. Like, life can get busy, and you stress so much over things that don't really matter.
Yeah.
And when you go back and think about it, and you're like, why did I waste the energy on that? You're just left wondering. And I'm like, all right, like, whilst you can react at the time to something that could potentially be wrong, like, I'm just trying not to dwell on certain things. So I don't know, take life a little less seriously is what I've been trying to bring to it.
Just enjoy.
Yeah, just enjoy certain moments, and trying to enjoy all moments, to be honest. But just be in the moment. Yeah. Be there, be in the moment. And that's, like, definitely in terms of relationships. I guess COVID was tricky because you couldn't go out and see whoever you want, whenever you want. But when you do get to hang out with someone, it makes it all that more meaningful because you're there because you want to be there. So, it's just been like a good time of connection, good time of just realizing little things about myself, like, and I don't know, I've just enjoyed talking and listening. And normally, like, I wouldn't talk so, like, this is probably weird for me because I don't like talking about myself so much, but there's like,
good on you for getting out of your comfort zone, man.
Yeah, what good is it, like, holding it all in? Like, people could be interested, and it doesn't matter if they're not. Like, it's just good talking to somebody.
Yeah, it's been an awesome chat, man.
Yeah,
I'm so glad we did this. Thanks so much for being on episode 3.
My pleasure.
What are your socials that people can check out your work on?
Alrighty, I've got 2 Instagram pages, just at Lewis Lotherington. I'm sure you'll put up the spelling.
Put up the spelling for Lotherington.
And if you like food, at Lewis Loves to Eat on Instagram. And that's the food page. And in the process of developing a website, but I just got to figure out what direction I want it to go in.
Cool. Well, if you've got that up by the time the podcast is up, or I could add it in later on because technology.
Yes.
So thanks so much, man.
My pleasure.
Catch you later.